She had learned early how to walk through hallways without being noticed. Head slightly down, step steady, eyes forward. At her old school, this habit kept her safe. At the new school, it only made her stand out more. People noticed quiet. They noticed difference. And they noticed that she did not laugh when others laughed or bow her head when someone tried to make her feel small. She transferred midway through the school year after her mother changed jobs. New city, new apartment, new school. Everything felt unfamiliar. The building was large and old, with long corridors and loud echoes. Groups formed quickly here. Some students ruled the hallways with confidence, and others learned where not to walk, where not to sit, and when to stay silent. From the first week, she felt eyes on her. At first, it was just whispers, small laughs when she passed by, someone brushing her shoulder a little too hard, someone kicking her bag by accident, then smiling like it was funny. She told herself it would stop. She told herself people just needed time. She was wrong. The teasing grew sharper. Her clothes were called cheap. Her voice was mocked when she answered questions in class. When she stayed quiet, they said she thought she was better than everyone else. When she spoke up, they said she should know her place. It never made sense. No matter what she did, it was wrong. She tried to ignore it. She focused on schoolwork, spending lunch breaks in the library or empty classrooms. Teachers noticed her good grades and calm behavior, but they did not see what happened between bells. Or maybe they saw and chose not to look too closely. It was easier that way. There was one group that led most of the trouble. They were known around the school for being loud and fearless. People stepped aside when they walked by. Even teachers spoke to them carefully, like they were afraid of pushing too hard. The group enjoyed that power. They enjoyed knowing they could say things out loud that others only whispered. At first, she hoped staying invisible would protect her. But the group seemed bored. They wanted a reaction. They wanted control. And silence frustrated them more than tears ever could. One afternoon, as classes ended, she found her locker door covered in writing. Ugly words. Cruel jokes. People stood nearby pretending not to look. Her hands shook as she wiped the marks away with her sleeve. No one helped. No one spoke. She cleaned it all herself and walked home with her shoulders tight and her head buzzing. At home, she said nothing. Her mother worked long hours and already carried enough stress. She did not want to add more. She told herself she could handle it, that it was temporary, that strong people endure. But endurance has limits. The messages began next. Notes slipped into her bag. Anonymous texts sent late at night. Some warned her to stay quiet. Others told her she did not belong. She blocked numbers, deleted messages, and tried to sleep. Her dreams filled with falling, with being chased, with voices laughing behind her. One day, a teacher paired her with someone from the group for a project. The classroom felt colder after that. Every shared meeting turned tense. Her ideas were mocked. Her words were twisted. Others laughed along, afraid to be next. She reported the behavior once. Just once. She stood outside the office, hands folded, heart pounding, and explained what had been happening. The response was polite but empty. She was told to avoid trouble, to stay away from certain people, to focus on her studies. No one followed up. The group learned quickly that nothing would happen to them. Soon, the teasing turned into challenges. Dares whispered just loud enough for her to hear. Comments about proving herself, about being brave, about meeting face to face instead of hiding behind teachers and books. She ignored them, but the pressure grew. Then came the message that changed everything. It arrived one evening, short and simple. It claimed they wanted to talk, to clear the air, to end the problem once and for all. The location was the school rooftop. They said it would be private. No audience. No drama. Her chest tightened when she read it. Every part of her said not to go. But another part, tired and worn down, wanted peace. She wanted it to stop. She wanted to walk through school without fear. She wanted control over her own life again. She did not tell anyone. The next day, she went to school like always, her face calm, her heart loud. She carried her books, answered questions, and counted the hours. As the final bell rang, Students poured out of the building. She stayed behind. The stairs leading upward were quiet. Each step echoed. The door to the roof was heavier than she expected. When she pushed it open, the sky was wide and pale. The city stretched below, distant and unaware. She was not alone. The group stood near the edge, relaxed, smiling like this was a game. The moment she saw them, she knew she had made a mistake. Her body froze, but her feet had already crossed the line. The door closed behind her with a dull sound. The air felt thin. Her heartbeat filled her ears. She told herself to stay calm, to listen, to speak carefully. She had no idea that this was only the beginning. The moment the door shut behind her, the sound felt final. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. She stood still for a second, her hand still near the handle, as if she could pretend she had just arrived by mistake. The wind moved across the open space, cool and steady, brushing against her face. The city below looked far away, quiet and unaware of what was happening above it. The group watched her like she was late to something they had planned carefully. None of them spoke at first. They smiled, slow and confident, the kind of smile that made her stomach tighten. She took a step back without thinking, then realized there was nowhere to go except toward the door or closer to them. She cleared her throat and forced her voice to stay steady. She asked why they wanted to meet. She said she was tired of the drama. She said she just wanted peace. Her words sounded small in the open air. One of them laughed. Not loud, just enough to show they were amused. Another leaned closer, asking why she always acted like a victim. Someone else said she should stop pretending she was better than everyone. The words came from different directions, circling her, pushing in. She tried to explain. She said she never bothered anyone, that she just wanted to go to school and go home, that she did not understand why they hated her so much. As she spoke, she realized something painful. They were not listening. They never had been. They moved closer, slowly, like they had all the time in the world. Her back brushed against the low wall at the edge of the roof. She glanced behind her, then quickly looked away. The height made her dizzy. She focused on their faces instead, hoping to see some sign of doubt. There was none. One of them said this was her chance to prove she was not weak. Another said she needed to learn respect. The words did not even sound real anymore. They sounded practiced, like lines repeated so often they no longer carried meaning. She felt anger rise in her chest, sharp and hot. For weeks she had swallowed it. She had stayed quiet, hoping things would change. Standing there, cornered and judged, something inside her snapped. She told them to stop. Her voice was louder now. She said they had no right. She said they were cruel. For a moment the group looked surprised. They were not used to her raising her voice. That moment passed quickly. The teasing turned harsher. They mocked the way she spoke. They mocked her courage. One of them stepped so close she could smell the strong scent of cologne. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She tried to step sideways, but another blocked her path. She realized then that this meeting was never meant to solve anything. It was a setup, a stage. They wanted to scare her. They wanted control. The truth hit her with a cold clarity that made her hands shake. She turned toward the door, hoping she could run. Someone grabbed her arm. Not hard at first, just enough to stop her. She pulled away, her breath coming fast. She shouted for them to let go. The sound disappeared into the open sky. Fear spread through her body, heavy and real. She thought of her mother waiting at home, unaware. She thought of all the times she had stayed silent, believing endurance meant strength. She wondered if she had been wrong. The group argued among themselves for a moment. Some wanted to keep it a scare. Others wanted to go further. Their words overlapped, careless and casual, like they were discussing something small. She stood there, trapped, realizing how little her safety mattered to them. The wind grew stronger, pushing against her back. She tried to stay balanced, pressing her feet firmly against the concrete. Her legs felt weak. She kept her eyes on the door, measuring the distance, calculating chances. One of them accused her of telling teachers lies. Another said she had embarrassed them. None of it was true, but truth no longer mattered. They needed a reason, any reason, to justify what they wanted to do. She spoke again, quieter this time. She asked them to let her go. She promised she would leave them alone. She promised she would not tell anyone. The words tasted bitter, but fear pushed them out anyway. The laughter stopped. The silence that followed felt worse. She could hear her own breathing, fast and uneven. She could hear the city sounds far below, distant horns, faint voices, life continuing as if nothing was wrong. Someone stepped behind her. She felt it before she saw it, the shift in air, the pressure. Panic flooded her chest. She twisted, trying to move away, her foot scraping against the ground. Her balance wavered. In that moment, time felt strange, slow and sharp at the same time. Her thoughts scattered, then focused on one thing only: survive. She reached out, not knowing what she was grabbing, just knowing she could not fall. Her fingers closed around fabric. An arm. Someone shouted. The world tilted. She did not fall yet, but she knew, deep in her bones, that something terrible had already been set in motion, and there was no turning back now. The moment her balance broke, fear took over her body completely. There was no time to think, no time to choose. Everything happened on instinct. Her hands tightened around whatever she had grabbed. She felt fabric stretch under her fingers. She heard a sharp shout, filled with shock and panic. The ground seemed to slide away beneath her feet. Her stomach dropped as the edge of the roof rushed closer. The sky above felt too wide, too empty. For a split second, she believed this was the end. Not in a dramatic way, not with clear thoughts, but with a cold certainty that made her chest ache. She went over the edge. But she was not alone. The weight in her hands pulled back suddenly, uneven and frantic. The person she had grabbed stumbled forward, caught off guard by her grip and the sudden loss of balance. There were more shouts now. Someone screamed her name, not in concern, but in disbelief. Time slowed in a strange way. The fall was not straight down. They hit a lower structure first, a wide ledge several feet below the roof. The impact knocked the air out of her lungs. Pain exploded through her side and shoulder. Her head rang and the world blurred. She did not scream. She could not. Her breath was gone, stolen by the shock. She lay still for a moment, her body refusing to respond. All she could hear was her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Next to her, the other body moved. A groan broke the silence, sharp and full of pain. That sound grounded her. It told her she was still alive. Told her this was real. Above them, faces appeared at the edge of the roof. The group stared down, frozen, their earlier confidence gone. Fear had replaced it, wide-eyed and pale. None of them spoke. None of them moved. Her chest burned as she finally managed to breathe. Each breath hurt, but it came. She closed her eyes for a second, then forced them open again. She was afraid that if she closed them too long, she might not open them at all. Her arm throbbed where she had grabbed on. Her side screamed with pain when she tried to move. She stayed still, afraid of making things worse. She focused on slow breaths, counting them in her head, the way she had learned to do when panic threatened to take over. The person beside her shifted again, trying to sit up. He cried out, then collapsed back down. Panic flickered across his face. For the first time, she saw something different there. Not cruelty, not confidence, fear. She wanted to say something, to tell him to stop moving, to tell him help would come. But her throat felt dry, and her voice refused to work. Above, someone finally ran. Footsteps echoed, fast and uneven. The door to the roof slammed open and shut again. Shouts followed, distant and urgent. The spell of silence broke. She lay there, staring at the gray wall beside her, noticing small cracks in the concrete. The details felt strange, too clear, like her mind was holding onto them to avoid the pain spreading through her body. Her thoughts drifted, unsteady. She thought about the first day at the new school, about how hopeful she had been, about the promise she made herself to stay strong. She wondered if strength always had to hurt this much. Voices grew louder above. Someone yelled for help. Another voice sounded shaken, repeating that it was an accident. The words felt hollow. Nothing about this felt like an accident. The wind brushed against her face again, cooler now. She shivered, though she was not cold. Her body trembled with shock. She tried to move her fingers and toes, relief washing over her when they responded, even though it hurt. Sirens appeared in the distance, faint at first, then clearer. The sound made tears sting her eyes. Help was coming. Real help. Not empty words or ignored complaints, but people trained to act. The person beside her began to cry, soft and broken. He kept saying he did not mean it to go this far. He said it was supposed to be a joke. The words made her chest tighten. A joke had almost ended her life. She turned her head slightly to look at him. Their eyes met for a brief second. She saw regret there, but it came too late to mean anything. Pain and fear had stripped away the mask he wore at school. The ledge suddenly felt smaller, more fragile. She became aware of how close they still were to the edge. She froze, afraid to move even an inch. Soon, voices reached them directly, calm but firm. Someone told them not to move. Someone said help was right there. A face appeared above, wearing a helmet, eyes focused and serious. Strong hands reached down carefully. A harness followed. She felt herself being secured, lifted slowly, inch by inch. Pain flared as she moved, but she welcomed it. Pain meant she was alive. As they raised her, she looked back once. She saw the person who fell with her being secured as well. His face twisted with fear. She felt no satisfaction, no victory, only exhaustion. When they finally lifted her to safety, the ground felt unreal beneath her. People surrounded her, voices overlapping, hands steadying her. She let herself be guided, her body heavy and shaking. As she was placed on a stretcher, she stared up at the sky. The same sky she had seen before the fall. It looked different now, sharper, closer, like it was watching. She closed her eyes, not in fear this time, but in relief. The worst moment had passed. The truth could no longer be hidden. She did not know what would happen next. She only knew that she had survived something that should never have happened. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the pain and shock, a quiet strength began to rise. When she woke up, the first thing she noticed was the quiet. Not the peaceful kind, but the careful quiet of a place where people speak in low voices and move softly. The ceiling above her was white and unfamiliar. A steady beeping sound filled the room, slow and calm. Her body felt heavy, like it did not fully belong to her yet. When she tried to move, pain answered back, firm but controlled. It was not sharp enough to scare her, just enough to remind her of what had happened. A nurse noticed her eyes open and came closer, speaking gently. She was told she was safe. She was told she had been lucky. The word lucky felt strange, sitting next to memories of fear and falling, but she nodded anyway. Not long after, her mother arrived. The moment she saw her, the tight knot inside her chest finally broke. Her mother's face was pale, eyes red, hands shaking as she held her daughter's fingers. She kept apologizing, saying she should have known, should have seen the signs. The girl tried to speak, but her voice cracked. She squeezed her mother's hand instead, letting silence say what words could not. Doctors came and went. They explained injuries in careful language. Bruises, a broken bone, soreness that would take time to heal. They said she would recover. They did not talk about fear or nightmares, or the way trust breaks quietly. Later that day, police officers arrived. They spoke calmly, sitting at a distance, asking if she felt able to talk. She did. Not because it was easy, but because she was tired of holding everything inside. She told them about the messages, the rooftop meeting, the shove. Her voice shook at times, but she did not stop. Her mother listened in silence, tears sliding down her face. With every word, the truth became heavier, but also clearer. This was not an accident. This was something that had been building for weeks. The officers took notes and nodded. They told her she had done the right thing. They told her the truth mattered. For the first time in a long while, she believed it. Back at the school, everything changed. Classes were interrupted. Hallways buzzed with whispers. Administrators walked quickly from room to room, faces tight and serious. The rooftop was sealed off. Phones were taken. Security footage was reviewed. Stories that once lived in shadows were suddenly pulled into the light. Students who had stayed silent before were called in to speak. Some cried. Some admitted they had been afraid to say anything. Others said they thought it was just jokes. The excuses sounded small now. The group involved was removed from school grounds. Parents were called. Meetings were held behind closed doors. Words like investigation and accountability filled the air. News traveled fast, even without names being shared. Parents grew angry. Questions were asked about supervision, about ignored complaints, about how something like this could happen at all. At home, recovery was slow. She slept often, waking from dreams where the ground disappeared beneath her again. Sometimes she woke gasping, her heart racing. Her mother would sit beside her bed, holding her hand until the shaking passed. Between rest and doctor visits, counselors began to talk with her. They did not rush her. They listened. They helped her put words to feelings she had buried deep. Fear, anger, shame that was never hers to carry. One day, she was asked if she wanted to make a statement to the school board. The idea terrified her. Speaking in front of adults who once told her to stay quiet felt overwhelming. But she thought about the locker, the messages, the rooftop. She said yes. When the day came, she walked into the room slowly, supported by her mother. Her hands shook, but she stood tall. She spoke about what it felt like to be targeted, about asking for help and being dismissed, about how silence can protect the wrong people. The room stayed quiet as she spoke. No one interrupted. No one looked away. When she finished, her legs felt weak, but her chest felt lighter. She had said her truth out loud. Could not be erased now. Consequences followed. Policies were reviewed. Staff members faced questions. Training was ordered. The school promised changes, though promises felt fragile. Still, it was something. For her, healing continued one small step at a time. She began to understand that strength did not mean enduring pain alone. It meant asking for help. It meant speaking even when your voice shakes. It meant surviving and choosing not to disappear. Some days were harder than others. Some days, fear crept back in quietly. But now, she was no longer invisible. People knew her story, and the world was finally listening. Time moved forward even when it felt strange to do so. Days turned into weeks, and the sharp edges of pain slowly softened. Her body healed in small steps. She learned how to move without flinching, how to breathe through discomfort, how to trust her legs again when she walked. Going back to school was the hardest part. First, she studied from home. Teachers sent work online. Some wrote kind messages. Others kept their words short and formal. She noticed who checked in and who stayed quiet. It told her more than grades ever could. When the day finally came for her to return, her stomach twisted with nerves. Her mother walked her to the entrance and squeezed her hand before letting go. The building looked the same, but it felt different. Quieter, more careful. Students stared as she passed, some with guilt, some with curiosity. A few offered soft smiles. One person whispered an apology as she walked by. She nodded but kept moving. She was not there to collect words. She was there to reclaim space. The hallways no longer felt like enemy territory. Adults stood more alert now. Posters about respect lined the walls. Announcements talked about reporting concerns and supporting one another. The changes felt overdue but real. She took her seat in class and focused on the sound of pages turning. Her heart raced, but nothing bad happened. No laughter followed her. No whispers chased her down the aisle. For the first time in a long while, she felt something close to calm. The investigation continued quietly in the background. Meetings were held. Reports were reviewed. The truth unfolded piece by piece. Witnesses spoke. Messages were uncovered. The story could no longer be twisted or denied. Those responsible faced consequences. Some were removed from school permanently. Others were placed under strict conditions. There were no dramatic scenes, no shouting in hallways. Just accountability, firm and final. She did not attend those meetings. She did not need to. Knowing the truth was recognized was enough. What surprised her most was the response beyond the school. Community groups reached out. Parents asked questions. Conversations started in homes and classrooms. People talked about bullying in a way they never had before. Not as something small, not as something to ignore, but as something that could destroy lives if left unchecked. She was asked if she wanted to share her story publicly. She thought about it for days. Part of her wanted privacy. Another part remembered how alone she felt before anyone listened. She chose to speak. Not everywhere. Not all at once. But in controlled spaces with support around her. She spoke about warning signs. About silence. About how strength does not always look loud. Each time she shared, the fear lessened. Her voice grew steadier. The story no longer controlled her. She controlled it. At home, life slowly returned to normal rhythms. She helped with chores again. She laughed at small things. She sat at the table with her mother, sharing meals and stories. The house felt warmer, filled with quiet understanding. Some nights were still hard. Loud noises could still make her jump. Certain places still made her uneasy. Healing was not a straight line, but she no longer felt broken. She started writing again, something she had stopped doing when fear took over. She wrote about feelings she could not always say out loud, about falling and surviving, about being seen. Writing helped her make sense of things. It reminded her that her voice mattered, even on paper. One afternoon, she received a letter from the school. It thanked her for her courage. It explained new policies and training programs that were now in place. It admitted mistakes. Not perfectly, not completely, but honestly enough. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. Not as a trophy, but as proof. The end of the school year arrived quietly. She walked across campus one last time, feeling the sun on her face. The roof was still closed, guarded and silent. She did not look up at it for long. That chapter no longer owned her. She thought about the girl she had been when she first arrived. Quiet, careful, hoping not to be noticed. That girl had survived. But she had also changed. Strength now meant something different. It meant setting boundaries. It meant speaking even when it felt uncomfortable. It meant choosing self-respect over silence. She understood now that what happened to her was not a lesson she needed, but one the world did. As summer approached, she stood on her porch one evening, watching the sky change colors. The air felt lighter. Her breath felt easier. She knew life would bring challenges again. Pain did not disappear forever, but fear no longer ruled her choices. She had been pushed to an edge she never should have reached. She had fallen. She had survived. And now, she was moving forward, not as a victim, but as someone who knew her worth and refused to let it be ignored. Her story did not end on a rooftop. It began there,